So, excuse me, good afternoon, everyone. Today is Monday, November 9th, 2020. The time is 1:04 p.m. This is a special meeting sponsored by our Buildings and Grounds organization to meet our chosen architect for the Attorney Center, a building that's going to be built on this campus, which is LCA Architects. And before I ask everyone to introduce themselves, let me just say that attending are Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Filios. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. Sean, would you introduce, please, the gentleman from LCA?
Well, I'm going to let them introduce themselves, actually, but I thought I would just ask, because there's several key players from the county here that eventually they're going to be working with.
Sure.
So maybe we could just have the county employees stand up and just introduce themselves, and then Ken can go ahead
Okay.
and do his thing.
Dina, why don't you lead off, please?
Hi, I'm Dina Darrow, Finance Director. Hi, Ken Taylor, Public Defender.
Grantham Z, Network Administrator.
I'm Nancy Flapp, Senior Business Analyst.
Greg Mann, Building and Grounds.
Nancy, you can go too.
Nancy Jones, Communications.
And Tina?
The late Christina Chinorio.
Okay, gentlemen, your turn.
And then you have Commissioner Brooks, Commissioner Filios, and Commissioner Duncan.
Which I apologize. That is normal.
Oh,
I
that's
just, that's
right. I
why I
didn't
said
realize
it,
we
because
didn't-
your names weren't there. I just noticed it just now.
I didn't realize that either.
Yeah, I just
Go right
noticed it.
ahead.
This is the right one here, got me? Okay, well, I'm Ken Gallegos with Lombard Conrad Architects, and first of all, I want to thank you for selecting our proposal for your new Attorney Center. We've got just a few slides today. What we want to do is just introduce our team, kind of reiterate a little bit what was in our proposal, go over what each of us are going to do, whether it's Lombard Conrad or Longwell Trapp, and then at the end, really kind of go over a timeline of what to expect in this process from us. So we've kind of lined it out pretty well, I think, as far as what meetings and what we're trying to accomplish over the span of this project. So first of all, I want to introduce my team here. So this is Corey Trapp, Longwell Trapp Architects. Behind me, Russ Moorhead. He's our justice planner, Lombard Conrad. Ben Bernier, he's one of our project architects for this project. And I'm Ken Gallegos, I'm one of the partners there at Lombard Conrad, and I'll also be all the way through the project and another one of the project architects. We wanted to start out with Russ and Corey kind of going through a little bit of history of each of the firms and kind of what we've been doing for the last, 30, 50 years, that sort of thing. And then we'll go to Ben and then back to myself. That sounds right?
Right?
Russ Moorhead with Lombard Conrad Architects. Lombard Conrad Architects was established in 1972 in Boise. I've been working there and was a past partner there, so I'm a retired partner. I still work as a consultant to these guys in justice planning since 1986 is when I started there. And I've been working on projects up here in North Idaho and for Kootenai County since the early 90s. So not the original jail, but the first addition to the expansion. I was the project architect and principal in charge for that expansion. And then the last expansion that we just did to the Kootenai County Jail, I was the lead architect and partner in charge for that as well. Ben Bernier was involved in that, and we teamed with Corey with Longwell Trapp for that project, which I hope and still is a very successful project, on time, on budget, well received, I think, by the county, very smooth project. So we're proposing a very similar process to what we did for that project for this. Now, our firm, Lombard Conrad Architects, has been involved in government sector work since its very beginning. So 75% of our work is public sector work. We do also work in healthcare and education, but justice facilities is a huge part of what we do all around the Northwest. So that's not just jails. We do courthouse, court plannings, city halls, government centers, juvenile facilities, all across the Northwest. So recently, most recently, I'm working with Ken on White Pine County, Nevada, which is Ely, Nevada, where we're doing a courthouse expansion there with 4 new courts, 3 new courts, 3 new courtrooms. We're also doing a jail expansion at the same project. That's under construction right now. Just finished with Ken and Ben as well, working on a master planned expansion for Twin Falls County for 9 new courtrooms down there. That was about 2 years ago. Just recently finished up working with Ben with Nez Perce County, developing their new courthouse that they're planning down there. So hopefully we're going to be getting started with construction documents on that pretty soon. So that's a little bit ahead of this project, but a very good project that we've been working on there as well. So we've got lots of experience working with courts and court selection and the process, and we think we've got a really good interactive process that we work through. The primary roles that we'll be going through, the programming, of course, and we'll go through a schedule on that. We'll do plan layout and building design, security coordination, and some detention planning for the holding areas. And then we'll do construction documents and specifications. And through this whole process, the 3 of us from Lombard Conrad are the people you will see. We'll be doing the presentations, we'll be doing the work, whether it's here, whether it's remote. We are the ones that are doing that. Corey with Longwell Trap will be involved throughout the entire project from the beginning to the end. You'll see him a little more heavily involved in the end, but we don't want a handoff on our work, so we want him involved at the very beginning so he understands where the design concept is coming from as well, so he can help during the construction phase later on. So with that, Corey, if you want to give a little bit about Longwell Trap, and I know these guys see you probably all the time.
Hello, Commissioners. You're going to see a lot of me here coming up. As Russ said, I'll be the local contact. I'll be showing up a lot when they can't make it up. I'll be here more on a weekly basis, probably, or bi-weekly basis, representing the team. Longwell Trap, we started a firm in '81. Gordon started it then. I joined in '84, 2 days after I graduated as a head flunky. Now I own the business. I bought Gordon out 2 years ago. We've done a lot of commercial, medical, government type work. We did Post Falls City Hall, the remodel of Coeur d'Alene City Hall. I've done probably about 15 to 20 projects for the county over the past 15 years. And like Russ said, we'll be involved early on. We'll be the liaison going to the city, meeting with them, doing the pre-project reviews, working on the code issues, things like that.
Okay, thank you.
I think we, good afternoon, Commissioner, sorry, before I start. I think we kind of went over briefly the slide. Again, my name is Ben Bernier. I'll be one of the project architects working on the project. This slide's mainly just kind of going over a little more specific roles that everybody will have. Ken will be the principal in charge. He'll be the one signing the documents, but also involved in all the programming meetings, overseeing quality control for each of the different steps. Also will be involved in the construction administration project, part of the project, and also in the beginnings in the contract negotiations part of it. Russ again will be in the programming phase, schematic design phase, design development phase. I will still be talking to him during construction document phase and most definitely during construction administration, just when questions come up, especially anything detention related, holding cell related, or courtroom related. I'll be involved also all the way through the project in the programming phase. I'll be more compiling documents and getting the consultants in line and making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Getting all the construction documents, a coherent set so the contractor can bid it. And Corey, again, will be involved kind of throughout the project as well. Get him involved in programming, schematic design as well. And then most heavily probably in construction administration. He'll kind of be the eyes and ears locally here that whenever something comes out, he can run out to the site and answer questions. You'll probably also see him here at every meeting whenever you need him. This next slide is our construction consultant team, not our construction team, but our engineer team. Russ has kind of, over the years, Russ and Ken have kind of built this team as our justice team as far as structural, mechanical, and electrical go. I would say 75, 90% of our projects are with this team. So we know them very well. They know us very well. They know what we expect of them. We don't have to get on them all that hard because we've kind of, I don't want to say we've trained them because I'm not going to pretend to be a structural engineer, but they know our expectations of what we want for them. And they're all very good in their own right. And, I mean,
We worked with all three of them on the expansion, and they're top notch.
yep. And Welch Comer was the civil engineer in the jail expansion as well, so we have worked with them. I guess I'll mention Kara in our office, Lombard Conrad, is the interior designer. She's done a lot of our courthouse justice projects as well. Interiors, finishes.
I have a question, Ben.
Yeah.
Who actually does the structural calculations and the loading? Is that the structural engineer?
Yeah, Dan would do it. Yep. I don't. Yeah. I don't know if they let Dan actually draw anything. I think they have drafters to do that, but he's told me he just gets in and messes up the drawings when he tries. But he does do all the calculations and everything, and then all the quality control for everything.
Thank you.
Pretty much the meat of this presentation is really kind of going over this proposed schedule that we came up with. Now, dates, of course, slide here and there, but we can start here on the left, right? Our owner presentation today. We split this out into a couple phases, right? Our programming phase, where we're going to meet with all of the individual user groups to kind of go through their spaces, make sure we review the space analysis that was done before, kind of verify that with each of the groups, make sure that we haven't left anything out so that we can kind of narrow down square footage required for each of their departments that are going to go into this new building. And along the line have a number of different of these workshops where they're very interactive and hands-on, where we'll bring pieces to the table. Literally, we call them paper dolls of square footages of where we lay out stuff on the table, and that the users can actually move stuff around and really kind of design the layout of the building themselves to where they know how they want it to interact and adjacencies to the other spaces. And then we'll take that back and come up with the blocking diagrams where then we've got the adjacencies all correct, and then kind of further develop that into drawing actual walls and doors and really getting narrowed down those the floor plan layouts, the stacking layouts of the multiple floor buildings through a series of these workshops, through programming and schematic design. Those will all be done here on site with the users groups. We'll schedule, either a full day, or one day to the next day where we're meeting, say for an hour, hour and a half with each group to kind of go through their spaces and really kind of to line it out here. The red boxes there are commissioner updates. So we really need to keep you up to date on what the progress that we made the last month or so that not only it keeps us on schedule, it keeps you involved on the process that's going in throughout this building and really kind of making it interactive. And then each one of those meetings, as we start to narrow it down and getting some kind of preliminary cost layouts for square foot and things like that, we can kind of track stuff a little bit so that you can know that things are going the way that they should be and tracking accordingly. Once we get into the design development, that's when we kind of get down more into the nitty-gritty of the design. Well, we'll bring in our engineers a little bit more and talk about structural systems and the mechanical systems and electrical and all that, and we'll split that up. Here we just have 50 and 100%, but we'll probably do meetings in our office with the engineers at, a more frequent pace than what's shown here. Those are just showing, we're going to say, 50% owner meetings and 100% owner meetings, but in the interim, we're probably meeting 2 or 3 times with our engineers to kind of go over the design so that those meetings up here are on track. We have owner review in there for about 3 weeks. That's where, we'll have a set of, paper documents that we can leave up here for the individual spaces, the users to go through to really look at their space and make sure that this is what we talked about in these original programming meetings, is what the floor plan layout looks like now. So they'll have some comments from those meetings that we'll then incorporate into, our different submittal timelines. Construction documents where we actually get into drawing the details and figuring out every little piece that goes into the building and making those constructible documents. There again, on the end, once those construction documents are all done, there is an owner review period of time that, not necessarily a last look at the documents, but kind of double checking for everybody, all the users, that what's in the construction documents that's going to be built is actually what, we took into account, all the users group meetings and all the things that they wanted in the building that are actually incorporated in there. And at that same time, we'll turn in for building permit process, which Corey let us know they're taking about 8 weeks to go through that process up here. And in that period of time, there's still a little adjustment that can take place on the documents, of course. And then after that building permit, then we'll kick off in construction. One thing that's not shown on here that we were talking a little bit about is kicking off the construction manager, general contractor selection. This is part of the design build process for this building, which will happen roughly around mid-January sometime. Sean was saying, he's probably going to start some of that paperwork maybe in November and really kind of get the advertisement out in that January timeframe or so that that contractor selection can happen in February-ish, something like that. Right about that time where our documents are clear enough that the contractor can get in and start getting some good idea of pricing and systems and things like that. Getting them involved, real early in the process so that they can look at our drawings, where we're going, and maybe suggest some different cost alternatives that might be a little, less costly than we were thinking ahead of time, or they'll definitely give some good feedback on systems that they're see this facility using. Let's see, that's about it. Unless questions or stuff, that's all we've got. So we just really kind of wanted it to be interactive and have you ask questions of us in the process and hopefully answer all that.
And what do you estimate for construction time frame?
So time frame, we were figuring 14 months, was that 14 to 16?
Yeah, and we were a little hesitant to really pin down a construction.
No, that's okay. I'm just trying to get it
Because
right.
if we were building this straight from ground and we didn't have phasing issues or we didn't have staging to do and keep existing buildings in operation and stuff, which are all going to be something we need to work with. So we would be 14 to 16 months in construction. So, but with phasing, it could be longer. It could be shorter if we can get some earlier packages out for site work and demo work and stuff like that. But that's why, one of the reasons why we're excited that you guys are moving towards the CMGC approach on this, because that allows us to get the contractor on board to get his expertise in not only in pricing, but also helping in phasing and staging and where's he going to put this, where are we going to put this, what do we have to build for temporary walkways to get people around the construction to keep your existing facilities in operation. Where's he going to stage all this material? Where are we going to keep the parking going? So those are things that we need to work with and figure out, and then how long can he compress his schedule that makes sense for him and makes sense for the county on the construction side.
Leslie, Bill, any questions?
No? Do we get a copy of this kind of information?
Send it. Yeah, because the clerk needs a copy. If you have a paper copy, she could use one now, and if you want to send it to me, I can email it to them. So whatever you want to do.
So I'll just address this sheet real quick. We can just address this paper real quick. So this was just some preliminary thoughts on a starting point. So that's kind of where we're at. That's our prosecuting attorney, our public defender, they're just out of room. They just don't have any more room. And they really are not conducive to being split up. So that's kind of where we're at, and we need more courtrooms. And so that's just kind of where Sean and I put this out. And then you can see our existing admin building and our existing old courthouse. I didn't include Justice Center because nobody's moving in and out of there.
And you've
So-
just broken this out by groups, right? Not necessarily levels of the building that you're thinking of.
Well, I did it a little bit by levels just because the public defender, we're trying to get them a separate entrance. So being on the ground floor, I figured it'd be the easiest way to have two entrances to the building. But I am not an architect, so.
Ann, did you want to come forward and express some of your concerns?
I think Commissioner Duncan is doing a great job. If we're in the same building sharing walls and ceiling with the prosecutor, we have to be completely off with one another.
Talk to the microphone.
Yeah, come on up.
If you're gonna say
Don't be
something, come
bashful.
on up.
Well, and even that, I mean, because we've dealt with this situation in other courthouses before. It's like, so when we sit down and interact and when we do our workshop session with your group, we're gonna be talking about those types of things, about how do we let your clients access you without having to pass pipe or go through security? Because that's imposing to them coming through security. But at the same time, how do we secure the rest of the building from that part to the rest of the part? And can we funnel them back through security to get into the rest of the building, depending on how secure you want your building to be? So those are all interactive discussions that we're gonna have, knowing that we have you. And how do we keep you guys, you and the prosecutor separated, physically, emotionally?
Yeah.
Although, so we'll have those interactive sessions. Some of our questions were, what was your plan for this new building, knowing that we've seen some of the preliminary work that's been done? But what all departments are going in here, so we have a better idea of who we can start working with
Yep.
and who we're going to have to schedule interviews with and sessions with to talk about all these issues. Because we not only want to know the space, but we want to know how you operate, how you want to operate, how you currently operate. We'll take tours of your existing spaces so we understand that. How do you access the courtrooms? How do you access the other buildings on the site and the campus? Those are things that we'll go through with every department that is going to touch this building in one way or another.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Ann's organization, right? Ann, how many are you now? About 65?
Not quite. I think we'll be 60.
Oh, okay. And the prosecutor's about the same, right? A little over 60, I think. Well, the criminal. criminal's
side.
left, yeah.
Then you got civil, which is another
Right.
7 or
But civil will be on our floor.
On our
Yeah,
floor,
civil's
probably.
gonna be
They're up here.
Yeah.
where they need to go.
Did you get a chance, you toured the site?
Yeah,
This
we
morning.
came in early today, and we walked around with Sean through all the buildings and, kind of got the lay of the land a little bit, found out where each of the departments were. Talked about utility locations and what may be buried under the ground there right now.
So also knowing what we need and then looking at our campus, because I think we have one other place to build, which would be kind of up against Northwest Boulevard.
I showed him that.
Yeah, the annex.
So, I mean,
Not the annex, off the west side of the Justice Building.
yeah.
Not the
yeah,
annex.
in that parking lot. So, would 2 3-story buildings be cheaper than one 6-story building? Is that something else you guys can kind of look at when you see what we need?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We will analyze all the options flow in and out of the building, knowing that if we're putting the holding,
Yes.
central holding for 2 courtrooms, how do we access from this one location? And how do we transfer prisoners from there to your existing justice center, your existing courthouse, as well as into this building, so that we have a safe path and try to minimize that interaction between inmates and public and staff and inmates, as well as staff and public. So how can we work that? We're not going to be able to solve all your existing problems, but we have those thoughts in mind as we're planning all this. We also will probably get into a little bit of what we're backfilling some of the spaces. For instance, if the prosecutor is moving and consolidating into the new building, what happens to the existing space that he's occupying right now?
Right, and
They're
that's,
occupying
I kind of
Yes.
addressed that here too.
So is that adequate space for expanding? And right now, our concept is to not space plan that area out for a construction remodel, but to block that out and say, okay, the district court needs this much space plus this much future, so here's that block, here's where it comes from. So kind of identify just basic block areas of where that expansion would occur for each one of those departments and backfill.
Question for you, Sean. What were you thinking in terms of parking?
You know, we had that discussion today. We're gonna be required, because of the size of the building and the number of people in the building, per the code, to have X amount of parking spaces. Now, I don't think the city's gonna have a problem with counting our 200-plus spaces across the road as part of that project. So the challenge will be, you know, getting the underground ADA parking done with the project, because they're gonna require not just what we have now, but additional ADA spaces for the new building. And we don't have that capability across the street, so, but we do have it on the north lot, and we can juggle that around. But yeah, I think that the 1.2 million that we paid the city for the parking spaces is finally gonna come home to benefit us.
And we're certainly counting on that, because that was one of our biggest questions was to Sean this morning when we took the tour, is what are we gonna do with parking? Because this new building is gonna require all this parking, and when he pointed out the lot across the street, the shared parking is like, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we've leveraged that additional parking over there. And some of the preliminary meetings that we're gonna have with the city of Coeur d'Alene is about parking. Is this adequate? And we'll probably have to do a parking study of the entire complex to determine how much you've got, how much is over there, and how much we can use. And what's your largest demand, and how do we handle that? How do we handle it on jury selection day? It's like, where are they all gonna park? And how do they access the court system from wherever they're gonna park? If it's in the north lot, if it's across the street, it's like making sure that we've got that all back.
You know, I want to say, now that I'm thinking about it, we had that discussion with them. Were you involved in that? There was a discussion that was had with the city about the building, and there was, and I'm trying to think if it was this building, but I think you remember they said no. Finally, there was a lot of back and forth between Ted and myself and, I forget his name now, the civil engineer. And then they said, no, you don't have to do the traffic study. But
That was sealing off Garden, wasn't it?
well, I think it was all part of the whole thing. We had explained to them about the building, and I thought that they had come back and finally said, because we were getting quotes and getting ready to hire somebody to do the traffic study, and then I think they came back and said, so.
You don't need it.
Corey wasn't part of that, but we can check with Ted and, no, not Troy,
Because we will have to determine from the city if
That's right.
planning.
there's a
No, anyway, I'll tell you.
Right.
What we were talking about was a parking study, which is a little bit easier than a traffic study.
Right, so we may have to do a parking study, but I don't think we're gonna have to do a traffic impact
Are you
study, so.
planning on or thinking in terms of underground parking for judges?
You know, I think
I'm
it's
not
gonna
leading
end up.
you, I'm just asking.
No, I think it's gonna end up just being ADA parking because you already have barely enough there for the two buildings, and so you're gonna have to have that there plus what they require for the new building.
Okay.
Or you can flip-flop your ADA across Garden
Yeah.
and then make that secure underground parking for the judges. You
Yeah.
could do it that way.
It's probably gonna be a little bit better that way. Maybe have one ADA down and.
A couple
address
ADAs
judges
down
and-
there and, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's gonna be set up so that it goes right to a public entrance or a card locked door for the judges.
Right.
That's kinda how that would go, but we can address that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We did, and start talking with the judges and with whoever is in that meeting. And certainly, when we have our workshops, we would invite, you know, as many of the commissioners, and hopefully there's gonna be a liaison that's assigned to this project that we can update as we're doing the workshop sessions. And usually at the end of these are full days, so we set up like 2-hour blocks to meet with the public defender to talk about their stuff, then another 2-hour block to talk with the prosecuting attorney. Then we talk to the judges, we talk to the clerks. And then at the end of the day, we usually have a wrap-up session with the executive committee, with everybody involved, say, this is what we heard, this is where we're going, here's the questions or the action items that we still need to resolve that may take more than just meeting with staff. We may need an upper level to make decisions on some of these things. So there's a process that we go through, not just keeping you updated, but when there's decisions to be made, we'll be going to Sean and to you guys to make sure we're headed in the right direction.
I think it's important to note, and we will continue to note this as these workshops take place. Back to when the space planning study started, it was, you know, how can I say that? What you get and what you said you wanted in the space planning study are probably going to be two totally different things. The space planning study was almost a, you know, give us your best case scenario type thing. And there are some things in there that aren't realistic. And so individuals are going to be maybe asking for some of those things and it's not going to be realistic. So we'll have to remind them of that because.
So you're saying I don't get my own bathroom? That's what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
By the way, guys, do you have any photos of jobs that you've done? I mean, obviously, those of us that reviewed them, Sean and the three of us, in your packet, they're pretty impressive, but I'm thinking in terms of our other folks here. Do you have any in your slide presentation? That would be interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Public. So when do we start talking about cost?
Now's a good time.
We will be talking about cost all the way through probably about the second meeting.
Okay,
We'll start where we're talking about our preliminary program review. When we have a preliminary space analysis, which will tell us what the square footage is, that's when we will, in generality, start talking about cost.
okay,
Then each time we have another meeting, we'll continue to update where we think the project is going.
Okay.
We won't have a really firm cost until we get the CMGC on board. We talk about phasing.
right.
Right now,
But kind of
at
like,
this early phase, we'll be talking about cost per square foot. How
Right.
much square
Right,
footage.
right.
and then also your cost, your
Yes, our
fee.
cost, yes, our
Yeah.
fees, we are proposing a 2-phase contract.
Mm-hmm.
So that we'll be getting, which is very similar to what we did on the jail. The first phase will be the programming and scoping phase. So we'll go through this to figure out how big the building is, what it's going to be, what the preliminary cost is. We're gonna have blocking diagrams. That's all part of the first phase that we'll do. Once we know exactly what is in here and how that affects the site and everything else, then we'll move into phase two, and we'll give you a fee for phase two services, which will include everything from schematic design all the way through construction. And that will be based on how big the project is, what the budget is for the project. Because at this point, we don't know enough about the project to tell you what the budget would
Sure.
be.
Good.
Sure.
So probably within a week or two, we'll have a preliminary contract that we
Okay.
can send through
Right.
for you guys to start looking at, for Sean to look at, for you to send to legal for their review on the contract, and then fees and everything else on the different phases.
Okay. Good deal.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
When do you think you'd be making a determination as to whether one or two structures?
That is probably going to be right there about the end of December, 1st of January, when we do the
Oh, so
program
about
verification
about
and
a
user
year,
group meetings.
year out, okay.
Yeah. So about the end of this year. If we're still holding to this schedule. And I think when Ken mentioned that, I mean, we've got some dates set here, but because of holiday schedules and
Yeah,
everything
right.
else, it's like, we may go, instead of try 2-week interviews, one of them may slip to 3 weeks, you know, to skip over when people are available, when they're, you know, holidays and everything else for travel.
That's a difficult one to do. I've done it, where we try to get them all together, because, yeah, the holidays and all the players, so the sooner we can get those dates narrowed down, then I can help them start dialing it down, because it's tough to get everybody together.
That's what we're doing this day and age with the virtual meetings, being a lot easier. It's a lot easier to get together.
Yeah. They don't have to leave their office.
These are mainly Ada County
Mm-hmm.
courthouse. That one looks like Cassia County. Oh, those are all Chauvin, yeah. Franklin County, which is the city of Pasco, which is a municipal court. That is Bonner County. We did the courthouse expansion and remodel of their courthouse up there several years ago. That was an old Safeway store that was converted into a justice center with new courtrooms for Cassia County.
Wow.
Things like when we get into courtrooms, the things that we'll be discussing with the judges and the court clerks are sizes of courtrooms. I know you have like a large and two mediums, but what does that mean?
Right, right.
Because is it a district court, is it a magistrate court, is it a six-person jury, is it a 12-person jury room? Is it for in custody, out of custody hearings? It's like, and how many do you want in the public part of it? So most facilities nowadays, the well or the area where the judge and the attorneys work and the bench is a certain size, and that has to be to get ADA ramps, to get accessibility. That varies depending on the size of the jury box. It's about the only thing that happens. And the rest of it is, okay, how many public seating do you want? That makes it a medium, a large, or a small jury room or courtroom. And then what are your functions in that courtroom? Are you going to do jury selection in the courtroom? How many people do you typically bring in for jury selection? So do we have to seat 120 or do we have to seat 90?
Right.
So for jury selection. So, and how can we make this courtroom so we can sit them all for jury selection? Where are you going to do jury assembly? Whether they report directly to a courtroom or whether we have a jury assembly room, we're going to be talking about through the pros and cons of all those things for the new building. So.
So next steps, what we're thinking of is the next couple weeks, kind of Sean and I will kind of ping back and forth contracts, kind of narrow down the contracts and set those fee schedules and things like that for our phase one. And then while we're doing that, Corey and I will work together to kind of start talking about surveys and, getting the civil engineer started, doing some test geotech out on the sites, maybe both of those sites might be an option. Looking at that, kind of getting that process going and getting as much as they can do before, we get buried in snow too much.
And we may talk with our civil engineer about whether we want to do some ground penetrating radar in the area that we're talking about, so we can actually identify, where specifically are the utilities? Are there old foundations buried under there? That we may do a sample geotech hole and it may miss all of that stuff, but we may be able to find some things out without actually having to dig a whole bunch of holes there by doing different technology to find things.
There is an old foundation.
At lunch,
The grass is built on what was called the old Worley building. And so there's some cinder block and stuff underneath that grass, because I know I put that lawn in. But is Welsh Comer the civil? They're very familiar with the campus. Very familiar with the campus. But yeah, I would say that we need to get that done before the snow flies, so we can get some idea of what we're looking at.
Right.
For
If it's
the
even
dirt.
possible to go there.
Because for some people that don't know, back in the day, the master plan that you guys saw hanging on the wall in the courthouse, part of that master plan was to put the buildings and grounds shop in what would be the northwest corner of the two lots across the street, the far northwest corner. We did some geotech and come to find out there was a tunnel. There used to be a train tunnel in there, so they backfilled it with unsuitables. And so we had to move the shop to the front in order to be able to build it at all. So that's not surprising, just a little bit of excavation that we've done in these parking lots. Like this parking lot we did last year was almost perfectly clean. We had one small little square cost us a couple $1,000. And the one that we did, that we used to call the gravel lot, there was a massive area from what used to be an old campground up more towards the holding cell and where the generator is. That cost us almost $30,000 to mitigate that. We had to go down almost 2 feet. So it would be good to do all the possible testing that you can, because I'll just put it this way. I've yet to take something on down here and not have a surprise in the dirt.
Okay. Any other questions?
So within, Sean and I will take this back and go through the departments and kind of come up with a
Okay.
Kick off these design meetings with the groups in probably about 3 weeks. Come back up and we'll have a schedule of timeframe or, this department from, 9 to 10, this department from 10 to 11. And just kind of kick off that program verification and everybody just keep the ball rolling.
Okay.
So Sean, have you shared the facility study?
Yes,
You have? Okay.
yes, they have it
Okay,
in a roundabout way, but they got it.
okay. Fair enough. Thank you, gentlemen, and yeah,
For motion, we need to do the selection. We've never voted.
oh, did we actually?
I was
Yep.
gonna say,
It's
you,
an action item.
you have to make a selection, yes.
Yep.
Oh,
You have not
well,
awarded it
that's right.
yet.
It's indicated as an action item.
Yep.
All right, go right ahead.
I move that we select LCA as our architect for the Attorney Center.
I second the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and the motion is carried. LCA is selected as our architect for the Attorney Center building destined for the campus right here. Thank you, gentlemen.
I'll do a business meeting and request so you can formalize it next Tuesday.
Okay.
Because I still think it has to go through there, but it's just like awarding any other RFQ or bid. So I'll do that tomorrow.
Okay, cool. Thank you, everyone.